If you're making a mistake, or if you made a mistake, then starve yourself, and that will show you that you have to change something.
What?
All right, welcome back to the party, everybody. This is Morty, and I am your host, Lunch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Hit that like and subscribe, and let's party. So I saw this video from Dr. K, aka the Healthy Gamer, that was about why we don't learn from our mistakes, and something about how starvation is the answer. I don't know. I didn't really finish it. I wanted to check it out with you guys, so let's dive right in.
Today, we're going to talk about how to learn from our mistakes.
Definitely need that.
And this may sound
I made a couple of mistakes in my life, and I'd like to think I'd learned from them, but
like a really simple thing, but if you really stop and think about it, this is something that I struggled with and a lot of people struggle with. Because sometimes we do things, right, that we know aren't correct, but we keep doing them. As an example, I'll wake up and the first thing that I'll do is get on my phone or start playing a video game or start browsing Reddit. And I know in the back of my mind that once I start doing this, my day is ruined. We know that we should be exercising more. And then we exercise one day, right? And when you exercise for one day, you feel so much better.
That's me. That's me. I have tried to get into some type of, workout routine just because I know, number one, it's healthy. And obviously I want to look better. But because, and you tell me, is this an excuse? Because I see everything relating to working out coming from the perspective of you don't want to be fat and not, oh, you're a puny little skinny little whatever. It never really resonated with me. And as much as I've wanted to keep up with the routine, I've never been able to.
And you're like, wow, this is amazing. I have so much more energy. But then the next day rolls around and you seem to forget that. And this is a huge problem in society today because we know what we should be doing. And every once in a while, we actually do it.
That's actually spot on because that's how I feel about my channel here. It's not just working out that I've had an issue keeping up with. It's literally everything in my life. Literally everything in my life. If it hasn't been, the bare minimum for school or college, if it hasn't been something for my job, being able to keep up with anything has been impossible for me. So that it really shows me how much I love doing these videos, how much I love, meeting you guys, talking to you guys and all that stuff, because hey, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, I'm here every day. You will see a video from me. But that's really the only place in my life where I have that kind of consistency. So I don't know. How can I change that, Dr. K?
But when we do it, despite the positive reinforcement, we don't seem to implement changes in our life.
Nope.
It's almost like there is a subconscious block from what we know we should be doing. And despite all this evidence, we don't seem to be able to learn. And if you want to understand this phenomenon, it turns out that you need to understand the science of neurogenesis.
Neurogenesis.
So this is something that we've got to take a step back and understand. Generally speaking, when we are born, most of the neurogenesis, which is the development of brain cells, is already done. So we don't really grow a whole lot of new brain cells.
Oh, so you mean most of the cells that make you a person are there before you're born? Oh, okay. Just saying.
This is why patients who have strokes, kind of like that part of your brain doesn't really regenerate. So sometimes strokes will lead to permanent deficits. It turns out that there's one part of the brain in which we see neurogenesis, and that's in the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the part of our brain that governs learning and memory. And so it would make sense that if we're going to create new neurons, the one part of our brain where we would do that is where we learn new things and form new memories.
Makes sense.
If I learn to play an instrument at the age of 20, or, I go on vacation at the age of 30, or if I have my first child, I'm constantly forming new memories and learning new things. And so it also makes sense that if that neurogenesis in the hippocampus is inhibited in some way, then we may not be able to learn from our mistakes. And this is exactly what happens.
Okay, so how do we fix it?
There's a really cool experiment that scientists did, which was published in the journal Nature, around how rats learn, and more importantly, what inhibits their learning. So the experiment goes like this. We drop a rat in a pool of shallow water where there's one platform where the rat can rest. So it has to swim around until it finds the platform. So let's say the platform is in the top right. So over time, what happens is the rats will learn, right? So I drop them into the water, they swim, they discover where the platform is. The next time I drop them in the water, they swim around, they discover where the
go to the
platform
same
is. But
place.
over time, 3 or 4 times, they figure out, oh, okay, there's a platform right here. So they swim straight to it.
Makes sense.
Then the scientists do something tricky. They move the location of the platform. And what they discovered is that there are 2 kinds of mice. There are some mice that if we move it from the top right to, let's say, the bottom left, there are some mice that when we drop in, they keep on making the same mistake. They look for the platform in the top right. They keep swimming there, keep swimming there. They start to get distressed. They're worried. They don't seem to be learning from their mistakes.
So they got used to the idea that the platform was in the top right. And despite the fact that it's not there anymore, because it's what they know, they cling to what they know. And like you said, it becomes distressing because what they know doesn't comport with reality anymore.
And on the flip side, there are other mice that sort of figure out, okay, the platform is no longer here. Let me go look for it somewhere else. And they're able to find the new location of the platform. And then the second time you drop them in, third time you drop them in, they go straight back to where the safe space is. So there's 2 kinds of mice here, and one seems to be learning from their mistakes and one doesn't.
Quick aside, I want to give a shout out to my dad. Shout out to you for putting me onto the very short but very insightful book, Who Moved My Cheese? And it's the same kind of thing. It's about 2 mice and, they're in a maze and, they're going through the maze and they find this one room in the maze where there's a huge pile of cheese. And so they just go and they're like, yo, let's just stay here and stay with the cheese. And they're chilling, and they're chilling, and they're chilling. But eventually the cheese runs out. And so similar to the experiment with the platform, there's one mouse that's like, okay, well, this is where the cheese is. Somebody put the cheese here. So let's just stay here and eventually the cheese will come back. It's like, all right. So they wait, a couple of days goes by and no more cheese, no more cheese. So now the other mouse is like, well, we don't really know anything. Why don't we go venture out and see more of where the cheese could be? And the first mouse is like, well, I don't know. I don't really know what's out there. And I don't know. Eventually, the second mouse goes out and finds a new batch of cheese. And the moral of the story is that you should do what you would do if you weren't afraid. The first mouse was afraid of what would happen if they went and got lost, whereas the second mouse was like just realistic about the situation. All the cheese is gone. Staying here is not helping, learning from your mistakes and going out to find more cheese. So shout out to Dr. Lutch. Thank you so much for that information that has been up here for all these years.
And it turns out that this also goes to neurogenesis. What they sort of discover is that some mice will code a particular kind of behavior. And then they are unable to wipe that behavior clean and sort of re-encode a new form of behavior. On the other hand, some mice are able to wipe that old behavior clean and replace it with more optimal behavior.
Right. Just like a lot of people, if you haven't made that connection, obviously we do a lot of experiments with mice and rats because in a very specific context, it very closely mimics how humans act.
Sounding familiar? This is the problem that a lot of us face, right? Where we sort of learned a particular thing like, hey, it's actually okay to play video games. It doesn't cost me very much. But then as I get older, it starts to cost me more and starts to cost me more and starts to cost me more.
Yeah, when you're 12 years old, there's no big deal of spending 17 hours a day playing video games. But by the time you're 30, you ain't going to be doing so well if that is the case. If you agree and you want to better your life, then you will definitely find a home at the Indian Jesus Discord server where the party never ends. That's right. We are hanging out there 24/7. And after every live stream, we go in there for a live panel where you get to talk with me and the other people. It's not just stuck behind the keyboard. You are there live speaking, whether you want to have your camera on or off. It is a great time. Come and join us. Link is in the description and the pinned comment below.
And I may be consciously aware of it, but it's like something deeper in my brain is not able to learn that lesson.
But why?
So what separates the mice that are able to learn from the mice that aren't? And it turns out that there's one thing. It's not willpower. It's not motivation. It's not some kind of supplement that you can order online. It's actually fasting.
Fasting? So this is where I was really confused. So I was thinking about who moved my cheese, and that all made sense. But now he's talked about fasting, and I get a little lost.
So this is really interesting. Why is it fasting? Let's think about it for a second, okay? What is the one evolutionary signal that our brain needs to signal to us that, hey, this strategy is not working? How does the brain know that, hey, we need to rethink how we approach this, and we need to learn a new way of handling this? Okay. It turns out that the most powerful signal to rewire your brain is starvation.
So that means that I should starve myself in relation to things where I've made mistakes? I'm not really sure where you're going with this.
Because a million years ago, when our brains evolved, here's the sort of idea, right? So, like, if I'm living my life and everything is going really well, then we're fine. We don't need to change anything because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. How does our brain know that we're starting to screw up? When we can't find food anymore, because our brains have evolved for survival, right? Not to live in this digital age where we're bombarded with all the stimuli.
I mean, I do agree that, starvation can be a driver for behavior, obviously, but let's let him continue.
And so, what's going on in today's society? We're actually inhibiting the starvation and fasting signals that induce neurogenesis. So, the number one thing that causes neurogenesis is actually fasting or starvation, because this is our brain's way of saying, hey, this crap is no longer working because we're starving.
This is kind of what I'm talking about. I don't really eat that much to begin with. I went to bed hungry last night because I forgot to make food before I went upstairs. All that taught me to do is make sure that I have food ready to go when I need it. Because a lot of times I'm either busy or lazy, one or the other, and eating is just not a super high priority for me. This is what I mean about, like, how is this going to help me start working out?
And since this is no longer working, we need to wipe the slate clean and learn a new way of functioning. But what's happening in today's society? No matter how many mistakes you make, chances are you're still getting high calorically dense food. So what's happening in your brain? Even though on a conscious level, you're recognizing, man, my life is going nowhere, or I keep on winding up in the wrong relationships, or I wake up every day and I play video games.
But this is kind of like, we just did the video on homelessness. Are we to say that everybody who is starving is not making mistakes? Because it sounds like you're saying if you're making a mistake, or if you made a mistake, then starve yourself, and that will show you that you have to change something.
What?
I mean, are you guys understanding where he is going with this? Because we're almost done with this video. I have no idea what he's talking about. If you do, please let me know in the comments. But let's give him the opportunity to explain.
If you're ordering calorically dense food from like Uber Eats or DoorDash or whatever, if I'm eating pizza at the end of the day, or I'm eating all this calorie dense food, what does my brain actually think about the situation? It's like, hey, bro or girl, we don't have to worry about
or they or non-binary
about anything because we're still getting calorically dense, very rich food. We've won the game of life because we're still getting this really nutrient rich food.
Okay.
And when we get nutrient rich food, what it literally does is inhibit neurogenesis in the hippocampus, which prevents us from learning from our mistakes. And this sort of
okay, so that makes sense that if you're just stuffing your face, then you maybe won't have the biosignals to say, oh, something is going wrong. But there's plenty of people who don't have enough food and are also making bad life decisions. So what are you talking about?
It makes sense, right? Because what our experience of this is that we consciously know that's the cerebral cortices. It's like the top level of our brain. We know there's a problem, but somehow what we understand up here is not changing our wiring down below. And that's exactly what we see with neurogenesis. So now how do you fast? So this is also where I think we're starting to see a lot of kind of corroboration from the kinds of fasts that people do.
Did he explain it? Now he's just going to tell us how to fast, which would be, I'm going to guess, not eating. But he didn't explain how not eating will help you.
So the first thing is when we're talking about fasting, one of the sensitive signals there is actually glucose or sugar. This is part of the reason why I think we're seeing a bunch of low carb or minimal carb or ketogenic diets. Because if you kind of
we'll give him a couple more seconds to see if he pulls this together, but what is going on?
Look at these people, right, who are like on ketogenic diets and stick with it. They seem to be like crushing things, not just in terms of their diet, but in terms of the rest of their life.
Yeah, nobody who is on a ketogenic diet is making mistakes in their life.
Right? These are oftentimes motivated people who are doing better at school, they're doing better at work. So if you're trying to figure out how to fast, a couple of things to consider is low carbohydrate intake.
I'm not trying to figure out how to fast. I don't know, guys. I'm going to leave it here. You guys can check out the rest of the video, see if there's anything within the steps on how to fast that talk about how fasting will make you make better decisions. I think that was a load of quackery. if I may say so myself. But if you disagree, let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Once again, this is Morty, and I have been your host, Lutch, aka the Indian Jesus, here to resurrect the second coming of common sense. Until next time, guys, we are out of here. Peace.